Welcome to this edition of At the Mic. I'm your host, Keith Malinak. This week, I sat down with a sports and Bitcoin enthusiast, Jill Savage. That's coming up. First, I want to take a moment to remember someone you are very likely familiar with, a friend and coworker and radio legend who we lost way too soon, the irreplaceable Doc Thompson. This month, in conjunction with American Pride Roasters Coffee, we're remembering Doc and what a great person he truly was. I can't tell you how many times I've thought of Doc and how he would have been such a great guest to have here on At the Mic. His amazing personality, his knowledge, his incredible sense of humor, they would have made for the greatest of conversations. Doc was also a very kind person. He really helped APR Coffee get going strong when he fell in love with their amazing blends. Back in 2019, when Doc was suddenly taken from us, APR set out to create a coffee that would represent his legacy in a fitting manner. Doc's family shared a joke about the easing of other family members into bad news when a pet died. Instead of saying the cat died, they would just say the cat is on the roof, which is why the coffee named for Doc Thompson is aptly called On the Roof. On the Roof isn't a novelty coffee. It has a serious flavor. Pure Kenyan beans, full-bodied and malty, but versatile enough to be awesome in a French press, a cold brew, or virtually any brew method, really. There are 4 different labels randomly selected that are different images of Doc, but they're made up of hundreds of smaller images of him, all submitted by fans, family, and friends. It's truly a wonderful tribute. I hope that you'll try the On the Roof blend or any of the other amazing flavors available at aprcoffee.com. When you get ready to check out, use offer code ATM. You're going to get 10% off of your purchase. That's offer code ATM over at aprcoffee.com.
You're listening to At the Mic with Keith, an independent podcast production.
Jill Savage may have a background in sports broadcasting, which we're going to definitely discuss today, but she also tells us how she got interested in politics. She's also big into the world of cryptocurrency, and recently, Bitcoin mining has become a passion of hers and her family. Jill sat down recently, and we hit the record button for this episode of At the Mic. Jill, thanks so much for stopping by. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Absolutely, yes. Let's talk about your life story, which actually, if I'm not mistaken, is going to not cross paths with me necessarily, but we're going to have some areas in common, it sounds like, just based on the fact, well, let's just start. You were born and raised in Iowa.
Correct.
So you went to the University of Iowa.
Correct.
So
Two for two.
Right off the bat, you and I are mortal enemies because I went to the University of Nebraska and you guys constantly beat us in football. I don't appreciate it.
So we have to hate each other.
Yes.
So we're starting off on a good foot.
This is going to be a good conversation. Yeah. So how was it growing up? Because you grew up in Iowa, like your entire childhood, correct?
Yeah, I was born and raised in West Des Moines area. It's different than Des Moines if you're in the the area.
Hold on. How was? Do tell. How
Des Moines is
West
just
Des
like
Moines?
downtown, and it wasn't great back in the day. They've done a good job revitalizing it, but West Des Moines was just the burbs. We lived in the suburbs, so
right.
that was the big line of distinction.
If
But West Des Moines, different.
Okay, so if you're trying to convince somebody that living in Iowa, specifically West Des Moines, what's the biggest draw to that town?
Oh, when I was a child?
Well, sure, then and now. Like sell us on West Des Moines, Iowa.
The nicest people. And that is one of the things that if people get transferred in from other locations, they were like, we're never leaving. The people are great here.
Yeah.
And it's a great school system that are public schools, but are still actually good. They actually still do their job. Low cost of living. You can live in a nice home, a nice community, in a kind of easy way of life, right? Like you don't have all of those outside pressures and all that, a big city living.
Yeah, the Des Moines area seems to be the perfect size for somebody like me who wants the benefits of the big city but does not want the big city. And in fact, before we move on any further, I will say that the inaugural sponsor of this podcast, American Pride Roasters Coffee, is brewed right there in the Des Moines, Iowa area.
You're welcome.
Yeah, there you go. I love how it came full circle there. So I love the Midwest. I love it. And I love the pace of life. But I will say I've never spent any kind of amount of time in Des Moines. I need to do that. It's better than Council Bluffs, right?
Anything is better than Council Bluffs. Sorry
Hey,
to
look,
the people of Council Bluffs.
But look, now we have something in
we
common.
are building bridges
Yay.
so early on here. Yeah.
Okay. So you're obviously big into sports. I mean, that's your background. You've spent, I guess, the last 13 years in that field. When did you first get interested in wanting to be a sports reporter?
So I grew up sitting next to my dad, and whatever he liked, I liked. So it was sports, history, politics, right? It was
That's
all
perfect.
of it.
That's a trifecta. More bridges being built.
It was everything.
Yeah.
So I was like, God, Reagan, and Rush, right? Like when I was a child, more trifectas for you.
There you go.
That's what it was. And I was a child when B.J. Armstrong played at Iowa.
Okay.
And I would just go around and start cheering for him. And that was it. Like I was just so into Iowa basketball and then Iowa football. And by fourth grade was when I first watched my full NFL game by myself. My parents went to a Kansas City Chiefs game with my aunt and uncle. And I said, oh, well, they're going to be at the game. Obviously, I'll see them on TV. I did see them on TV,
wow.
which was the best part about it. And I was like, no, because you were wearing this and this is how you were sitting. And they were like, yeah, actually, you did see us.
Wow. Who are the Chiefs playing, though?
I don't remember,
Really?
unfortunately. Yeah,
Okay.
I just remember it was the Chiefs game.
Okay, sorry.
But I knew the NFL then by junior high, right? And like all the boys were like, oh, she actually knows what she's talking about.
Nice.
Like it kind of blew their minds.
Yeah.
And so by high school, I was in our fantasy football league with my dad, my uncles, and my cousins, and I won it my freshman year of high school. So you can imagine how good these guys felt. That like we lost to a girl. We lost to a freshman in high school.
That's awesome.
So yeah, that was it. I was always into sports and went to the University of Iowa for the cheap football and basketball tickets, right? Like education, cool. Football and basketball, front row.
Hey.
Little money. Sign me up.
I'm with you. In my 4 years at the University of Nebraska, the school won 3 national titles.
Okay, all right.
Lost just 2 games.
Yeah.
It was a fun time, but the tickets were typically around, $11 or so, depending on the game. There's a little bit of a spike in them if the game was a big one like Colorado or something coming to town. Sorry, I mean, there's not many opportunities that I get to brag about the University of Nebraska. I thought I would take my opening. Sorry to steal your thunder there on the football stuff. But please stop beating us in football, by the way.
I mean, I'm friends with a lot of the Nebraska coaching staff.
Yeah, I wanted to get into that. Let's talk about that because that's really cool.
They were in Eugene, Oregon when I was there. So I moved from Iowa to Portland and worked a radio on TV job, right? It was my first job right out of college. Just doing like what Hillary does here for the Blaze, kind of, for a sports programming show.
Nice.
And
that sounds like fun. So you
it
have
was.
basically guests come in and talk about stuff? Or?
Oh, I was the difference between the TV breaks and the radio breaks, right? Like it's like 6 minutes in radio, and you can't have a 6-minute commercial in television.
Sure.
So I was that filler
I see.
in the middle.
I see.
For all of that. So that was a fun job, and moved on from there to go cover the Oregon Ducks.
Oh, cool.
So I started hosting their pregame show. So it was an hour-long pregame show, a couple directors' chairs right there in the end zone on the field during warm-ups of the games. Chip Kelly was the coach. He had just taken over. So you want to talk about like the heydays of a sports program. It was right there with the University of Oregon.
Okay. So Nebraska's head coach and previous quarterback Scott Frost was the offensive coordinator during this era.
Yeah, he started out as the wide receivers coach there.
Yep.
And then moved up eventually to the offensive coordinator. So that was the best part, was just coming in. And Scott had moved from Iowa to Oregon about 6 months before I did.
Okay.
He was at the University of Northern Iowa before that as the co-defensive coordinator there. And so he brought one of his buddies.
I forgot the NFL. He played both sides of the ball. That's right.
Yeah. So he brought one of his buddies who's now Nebraska's defensive coordinator, who was a paid coach at UNI, took an internship at Oregon, just thinking like, stick with Scott. This will go a long way. And so he was from Iowa, played at Iowa. So we had a lot of things in common. So we all hung out there in the Eugene area. And now it was pretty cool because half of my apartment complex is now like the Nebraska coaching staff.
That's really cool. What a small world, huh? So do you guys still stay in touch? Are you friends? I mean, That sounds like it was a tight knit group there.
It was, yeah. It was a fun group. I still talk to them every now and then. I took a big road trip during COVID last summer because what else was I gonna do? So there wasn't much going on in the way of sports, as you may recall. So I took a 5-week road trip throughout the Midwest from Arizona, where I eventually made my way to.
Okay.
Back up and just stopped in Colorado along the way, and then Nebraska for a night and stayed actually with the defensive coordinator, his wife, and his 3 children now. So it was cool to catch up with them and see all of them again.
That's awesome. Okay, so you've covered a lot of ground as far as, Portland. I think you had a brief one in San Francisco.
Yeah, so that was where our company was headquartered. That was interesting, to say the least.
How so?
There were a lot of homeless people on the streets, and I was cool with the homeless people that I knew, right? Like, they were my people. I see you every day. I got you. You're at the same spot every day.
Part of your commute.
And then there were the crazies. And you'd cross the street, even if it was out of your way, just to avoid all
absolutely.
of it.
Play it smart.
I don't want anything to do with that. I'm just trying to get to work, people. Leave me alone.
I'm not going to look at you when I ask this question, but how many piles of human feces did you see on your...
Oh, well, that was a real thing. And I think that it'll say capitalism to you. They actually came up with urine repellent paint for the outside of buildings in San Francisco because they had such a problem with the homeless just going anywhere. And so then they're like, you know what? If we come up with this, maybe they'll stop if it comes back on them.
Wait, so what does it do? I don't understand. I mean,
it repels it. It doesn't sink into the wall anymore. It's just a barrier between the wall. So you just splash water. We'll just go with water at the wall, and it'll just kind of come back at you.
Let's just go with water. Okay. Oh, such an interesting part of America. San Francisco, California.
That was a 1 year. I told my bosses, I was like, you could double what you pay me right now, and I still would not understand paying $3,000 for a studio apartment.
I was just about to say, that sounds like one of those jobs where the lease period on your apartment dictates your situation more than your actual job.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so then Arizona, hot there.
Hot
right?
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But now you're in Dallas.
But I was on an airplane every Thursday and Sunday, basically. So for 14 straight weekends during college football, that's the life.
But let me ask you this, because there have been points in my career where this has applied, and let's see if it applies to you. You're a big sports fan.
Correct.
You're a sports reporter.
Yes.
So hold that thought for just a second. When I, for example, ran a radio station in Charleston, South Carolina, we had to set up the station on Saturdays and Sundays for Gamecock stuff and Carolina Panthers stuff. So while I always look forward to the impending football season, I also, at that time in my life, looked at the weekends fast approaching with dread because there was so much work involved around the edges of that. You're traveling, you're covering games. You're not getting to sit back with beers, and I don't even know if you drink beers, but sit back and watch sports on TV because you're working. Does that kind of dampen that vibe?
I absolutely resonate with that. And that's one of the unexpected things, right? You're like, oh, I love sports. I'm going to go into the sports industry. But my games, whatever time they kicked off, like maybe I would be able to watch an Iowa football game because they have that 11 a.m. Central kickoff. Maybe they would start soon enough that I could at least catch the first half before I would have to go to my game because I have to get there usually 3 hours before the game starts.
Right.
I would do pregame interviews with the coaches, and I would have to get there before the coaches do, set everything up.
Yeah.
So my whole day was shot. So when I was working with the Pac-12, we would also have different they would cut the games for us, so I could have them on my iPad later that night or the next day.
Okay.
So just to try and stay up with work, I even wouldn't watch much of the NFL the next day. I would go back and watch the other games in my conference so that I knew what was going on. So there's a lot of time in the weekend that you don't get to sit back, like you're saying, and watch. So during COVID, when the Pac-12 didn't use reporters at all during COVID. So this was the first time in probably 8 or 9 years that I got to sit there and watch college football. And my friends in the area, they're like, oh, well, Jill's not going to be out on Saturday. Like, she's busy. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. You know why? Because I haven't been able to do this forever, and I love it.
So let's talk about how often you would travel with your job. You took a trip to the Czech Republic, right? And tell us about that trip.
So I work a World Junior Hockey Tournament every year for NHL Network. I have done it now 7 times. Sweden, Finland, the Czech Republic, Canada a bunch, and 1 year in Buffalo.
Which one of these is not like the others?
So in 2019, 2020, it's always over Christmas and New Year's, I was in Ostrava, Czech Republic. It's the 3rd largest city there.
Wow.
So the United States, we got bounced in the quarterfinals. It wasn't our best. We had medaled 4 years for the 4 years previous to that. So that was kind of a big disappointment. But then I just stuck around. I already had my flight out, right? Like, you're in the Czech Republic, like, just stay. So I did, and I mingled with all of the fans, and I was there with 10 teams from around the world. That's how this tournament is held. And I took a long flight back from London to Phoenix, and I got sick the next day.
And
I thought, oh, of course.
January 7th, 2020.
January 7th, 2020. And I was like, well, after that long of a flight, there are germs everywhere. I'm usually pretty good about this. My immune system has seen it all. And I got sick. So I went in and I thought it was strep throat, right? Like, this thing was attacking my throat really, really viciously the next morning, 2 days after. So I said, all right, let me go get the meds, kick this, get rid of it. And I went in and the doctor's like, well, you're negative for everything. So it's probably just some virus that you got and it'll go away on its own. And I thought, perfect. I know the difference between bacteria and a virus. So I'm just going to wait for this thing to leave my system. And I got real mad when I was still sick 7 days later.
Yeah.
I was like, what is this? This isn't like the flu. It all just leaves. And I was sick for 2 weeks and come to find out, like, I am certain that it was COVID at the time because we were around all of these people in Europe when the virus was now, as we know, clearly out by that point in time.
Oh, yes, we do know. So have you gotten the antibody test?
No. Everybody was saying that it would only last for 3 months when it first came out. And then I thought, well, do I need to go pay like $150 or $200 for them to tell me I had it when I know all of the symptoms that I had? I know the length of time that I had it for is what everybody else is saying for all their symptoms. And they're like, oh, but could you taste and smell? I was like, I was sick. I don't know. Right? Yeah. Like, how much was I even eating at that point when you're sick? You know, you don't pay attention to those things.
I mean, it's the most sick I've ever been. I had it in December of 2020. So you were a trendsetter.
Yeah.
I came in at the end. But it affects everybody differently. It truly does. Like, I lost my voice. I remember I got it in, gosh, I want to say early December. I'm not positive. But we came back in here after the first of the year, and I still could barely talk. In fact, my voice to this moment hasn't fully recovered. But everybody reacts differently to it. It's such a strange, manipulated virus. It just...
So
anyhow.
I had COVID and jet lag at the same time. So
that's right.
Really
You're
exciting.
on a 12-hour delay or something, right?
Really fun.
Oh, my. Yeah, that does not sound... it sounds memorable, but not in a good way. So, did you specifically then go to the University of Iowa to study broadcasting?
I'm not joking when I say I went to the University of Iowa for football and basketball, right? Like, I studied communications and business while I was there. Yes, I took the journalism classes.
But you weren't kidding earlier when you said I went for the tickets.
I'm not joking. That was my education. And it was cool. Like, I had a public access show for 2 years, right? Like, it was live to tape, 30 minutes straight through, no commercials.
Wow.
So if that thing went south, you have to figure out how to get it back. And I think that was one of the best things that I ever did because we didn't have bosses telling us like, oh, change this, do that. You could watch it back and see what you needed to change very easily, right? At that stage in my career of college, trying to figure out how do I become a better broadcaster, right? Like, what am I doing with my hands right now? Why do I keep doing that? And you know, if a topic didn't work and it just bombed, then you have to figure out how to move on from that.
So hold on a second. I'm trying to figure this out here in my mind. So what years were you there?
I was there from 2003 to 2007.
So you probably avoided this stuff instantly showing up on the internet or YouTube
Right.
or something.
YouTube was out,
yeah.
but it was just coming out.
Yep.
So nobody really knew what to do with it yet.
Can you imagine if everything you did when you were trying to learn your craft was out there forever?
I would put it on a private channel, right? Like nobody else can see this.
Yeah.
I can see it and I can share a link with whoever I want. That's how I would
Because
do it.
see, I had a radio show back in college that I thought was just, oh, this is great. This is the greatest thing ever. And I've talked about this on this podcast before, that my kids and I sat around recently and listened to a little bit of one of the shows, and they just mocked me, rightfully so, mercilessly. And I thought to myself, I could destroy these, but nah, I won't do that. I want my grandchildren, I want them to be able to hear my voice and all that stuff. But the quality of the programming was horrific, and I just am so grateful the internet was in its infancy back then.
Yeah, I have shows on a DVD somewhere still that they may or may not make it through a couple more moves if I keep going around. So, oh, they got lost. Sorry, everybody.
Yeah. No, it's But see now, if you actually do lose them, that's more of a panic than actually holding on to them, because you're like, oh my gosh, who's got access to these now?
Well, you just take a hammer to them and then they're done.
Yeah. Right out of college, you were in the world of broadcasting, but you have held, like all of us, other jobs along the way, primarily in high school and stuff like that. You worked at the mall? What did you do at the mall?
So I always wanted to get 50% off all of my TV outfits.
Your motivation for education and job seems, well, creative.
What do I need in life, and how do I get it, and how do I get other people to pay me to do that?
Wow, that's a good
That
plan.
was my whole life strategy straight out of college. Like, I want to go to a lot of games, and I don't want to pay to go to a lot of games, so I got paid to go to games for 13 years.
I mean, there it is.
I got to go to the Final Four, CFPs, Super Bowl Radio Row in New York and Arizona and all that. Like,
how cool.
There were cool events along the way, and I got paid to be there.
And then with the mall stuff, you got 50% off
That's
your
right.
clothing. Like, what store were you at?
I was at Ann Taylor back in the day.
Okay.
Professional enough to be on TV.
I see.
You know.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you ever have to eat in the food court?
I mean, have to eat in the food court,
I'm just
or
saying
got
that,
to eat in the food court?
I mean, there's been an era in my life where
Yes, I did.
I worked at the mall,
Yeah.
at Radio Shack. Had to eat in the food court. Just the loneliest place when you work there and you realize this is your escape for the day.
Yeah, this is my 15 minutes.
This is
it. Let's go get some corn dog nuggets, guys.
Tell us about Brian Movelson.
Oh, yeah. He is my boss, mentor, everything. So, Mauve, as we call him.
Nice.
He is the greatest marketing person that I've ever met in my entire life, the greatest networker, right? Like, you can walk into a room with 600 people and he'll know 400 of them. And we're like, how is that humanly possible, right? Just one of those guys that has that trait.
Yeah.
So he was a global marketing guy for EA Sports and like the Madden tournaments and all
cool.
that. Like, pretty cool stuff. But I met him because he was Brent Musburger's spotter. So a lot of people don't know what that is.
Yeah.
So when you're a play-by-play guy up in the booth, you have somebody that's standing next to you, right? Brent is looking for the ball carrier, the wide receiver, and Mauve's job was to look for flags and whoever was going to make the tackle, right? So they have a board in front of them with all of the names and numbers, and it's all the same every week, so you know where that's going to be. So Movelson would just point on the board, right? Like 53 with the tackle. And so Brent doesn't miss a beat when he's calling the game. And that's just kind of the way that TV works. And so he was there with him for, I want to say 15 years. He was with Al Michaels for 5 years as well. And so he was just up in the booth, and I was back at the University of Iowa my junior year and wanted to get into sports TV. And I knew that College Game Day was coming to town, and I knew that we were going to have the Brent Musburger, Kirk Herbstreit crew calling our game. So I went to our sports information department, which is all the people that are there in charge of running the football programs from a communication standpoint. And I was like, I need some email addresses. Nice. They already knew who I was at this point. And so I got the emails of the producer for that show and for College Game Day as well. And I just showed up at the TV trucks. They said, we still need somebody to work the game.
Cool.
And I was like, again, you're going to pay me to go watch this football game when I'm in high school. Now it's only $100, but still $100 to a college kid is like amazing.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I got paid to be a runner for Nebraska, UCLA in 1994, where I got to literally sit on the field and do nothing the entire time. Steve Cyphers was the guy I had to walk around and carry the cable for.
Exactly.
Just pregame and halftime. Literally, that is all I had to do.
Yeah.
Now, I had some classmates that had to do a lot more tough jobs.
Actual work.
They drew the short straws.
So yeah, that's what I was. Yeah. I was a runner for them, and I was called the booth assistant, is what they called that. And basically, they're like, "Oh, Brent and Kirk, they'll like you. You'll help them out with whatever they need before the game. If they need an additional roster, if they need coffee, literally whatever you want." And so there I was, like Kirk Herbstreit, talking trash to me as we go to commercial break in the third quarter because Ohio State's just crushing us at this point. He's like, "You are going down. It's over." And I was like, oh, this is my life. Like, this is real life right now. This is
cool.
Incredible. So I worked a bunch of games with them, and then I ended up going out and doing a Rose Bowl with them, actually 2 of them. And then fast forward back to the Oregon days, Mobile Sim brought Brent in to have a football dinner kickoff, like the season type of thing for a bunch of the big donors and all that. And Brent walks up and he's like, "Hey, Jill, how are you?" And I was like, guys, Brent Musburger knows my name without anybody having to tell him. My life is complete. You can say whatever you want from this point on. Like, that was it for me.
That is so cool. That is, I love that story. So it's fun. It's so cool on one level, right, to be there. But at the same time, as I go back to finding the little gray cloud there, is that, while you're covering sports, you can't be enjoying it.
Yeah.
You're just working, and it's like...
But I would say, like, the moments that I was able to be on the field for, the amount of things that I heard that I could not report back because you can't say that stuff on TV.
Right.
Those moments were awesome while I was in it.
Yeah. My big payment from ESPN that day in 1994 wasn't so much the $100 paycheck. It was, I asked before we closed down shop at the end of the night, I asked one of the floor guys, "Hey, do you have any of these extra ESPN banners?" And they gave it to me, so I have this huge, old school ESPN banner. That was worth it more to me than anything else that day.
Exactly. Like, you get a little piece and you get to hold on to that and keep it with you forever.
Yeah. Okay, let's shift gears here. Let's talk about music. And let's talk about Taylor Swift.
Yes? What would you like to know?
I don't know that I want to know anything. I have sincerely tried to get into Taylor Swift music. I really have.
Okay.
I will say that there has been at least one moment where I remember liking a song and using the old Shazam app on my phone and going, "Oh, no, I do like this."
Yeah,
but
she creates a good hook.
But in general, I don't know. Sell us on Taylor Swift.
I'm obsessed with T-Swizzle.
That's the problem here. It's not that you're a fan. You admit that you are obsessed.
Yeah, like I'm just gonna.
Oh no.
Just show you my phone here. Right, this is just my library, and it's just those are all Taylor. That's it. Taylor. Somebody was like, "Oh, what's your top Spotify?" And I was like, guys, why do I need Spotify? Why do I need to pay for Taylor every month? I'm just gonna buy the album and have it for life, and just keep playing that.
You don't listen to anything else?
I mean, I like Bob Seger. That's like it's such a different.
It is quite a spectrum run there.
But I feel like when I go on a road trip, I love like Bob Seger's greatest hits. But otherwise, I mean, it's a lot of Taylor. It's a lot of talk radio.
Uh-huh.
And Taylor. You can judge me. I don't care. I fully own it.
No, it sounds good.
I don't really care.
Yeah, okay. Have you ever been to a Taylor Swift show?
Yes.
I mean, if you're obsessed, you probably have.
I have been.
How many?
3. Not that many. I mean, she's had more than that. I haven't been able to go to all of them.
Okay. Well, that's cool. So you're
Judgment.
Oh, yes. We'll get back into our conversation with Jill Savage in just a moment, but first, let's chat about the world of CBD products and how they may be just the thing for you to help with some struggles you might be facing. drmonroescbd.com is the one-stop shop on the web if you're looking for ways to ease the pain, but also if you're having trouble getting restful sleep, if you're battling anxiety, depression, or stress. And a great way to introduce yourself to CBD is through chewable gummies. These things are so good. They are going to help you without getting you high and without you having to worry about failing a drug test either. I hope you'll give it a shot. Gummies from drmonroescbd.com. And don't forget, you're going to save 15% off your purchase when you type in promo code Keith. That's my name, Keith. That's the promo code you're going to use over at drmonroescbd.com. So you are a big Taylor Swift fan.
Correct.
But you're also a big Steve Deace fan.
Correct.
Who is a coworker of mine on The Blaze. Your latest book that you've read was one that he and Todd Erzin, previous guest on the podcast, both of them, their book, The Faucian Bargain. Mm-hmm. Good stuff, huh?
Really good stuff. They went out there and said all of the things that, ironically enough, we're seeing on the news media.
Right? Isn't that something?
These last few weeks, it's been really interesting to be like, oh, I already knew that. And my friends, right? Like, I remember just telling my friends, like, it didn't come from a bat. It came from a lab in Wuhan. And Jon Stewart's making that argument a lot easier. Mm-hmm. But if you wanted to actually dive deeper into it, they were like, but how do you know that? I'm like, bro, because it makes sense, right? Like, it just so happens to be the only level 4 biolab in the area, like in the whole, province of China. Like, that's it. That's all you got. Right here, down the road.
Yeah, just ironic.
And that's a really strange coincidence. And I didn't believe that. And it was really hard for people to believe anything else than what they were told. Right. And that is the overarching thing that we saw throughout COVID in every shape and form.
Yep. Great book, Faucian Bargain by Steve Deace. Now I want you to tell us about the Federal Reserve.
Yes, my favorite topic.
And the creature from Jekyll Island.
Yes. So
another great book.
I read that during 2008, 2009.
Oh, right? That's a good time to be reading it, too.
During the financial crash, it was, you're flipping pages and you're like, oh my gosh.
We're living this.
When did he write this book? He wrote this book, like 20 years ago. And just going, oh my, this is literally what's in the news. Again, like much like Faucian Bargain. Mm-hmm. And now we're seeing that play out. I don't know. Maybe my timing with books was just really good back in 2008 as well. And I will never forget. Chapter 2 is called The Name of the Game is Bailout. And I'm like, what? You've got to be kidding me.
What timing, right?
Right. And I'm like, this is exactly what it was set up to do. Don't let them fool you, right? Like, this was the actual playbook from the beginning. Is the banks, they're never going to have any of the responsibility on them. It is always going to be pushed over to the taxpayers. So that
every time.
That is like the thing that I geek out the most over. And all of my football crew, I would like sneak in lessons for them. And I don't know if they really, at some point they were into it because they knew they didn't have a choice. And they're like, well, Jill's just going to tell us all this stuff. So I guess we're going to listen. But I like to think that they learned something along the way. So I would take little nuggets here and there and bring it to the people.
Have you ever read the book Captains and the Kings?
No. Add it to my list?
Add it to your list.
Okay.
And then get back to me.
Okay.
I'll just throw that out there. Taylor Caldwell, I believe. Captains and the Kings. I enjoyed that book, and I'll leave it there. I don't want to pull a Glenn Beck and like ruin it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, because it's like, you got to see this movie. This is how Glenn sells it. You know, like, you got to see this movie. It's so great. What happens is the opening scene, the guy does this, and then by the end of the movie, you're like, wait, I thought the opening scene, it had no relevance to the last shot, and then all this stuff. And you're like, Glenn, I've just seen the movie by you talking about it for the last 10 minutes.
But he saved me from watching Noah, so I'll thank him for that, because the rock people. He's like, we can't do that. He's like, they wanted me to say something nice about them, and I couldn't. There was nothing nice to say.
So good. Okay, your favorite app is Twitter.
Yeah, I'm on it all the time.
That's where I go to lose friends. Yeah,
I was convinced around the time, obviously conservatives lose people on Twitter all the time, just as a way of life.
Yeah.
And I would bookmark a lot of things. I wouldn't even like it. I would just bookmark it so nobody else knew, but the app knew, the people knew, right? The Twitter people knew. I was losing followers.
Oh, you're gonna love Captains and the Kings. But anyway, continue.
Yeah, no, I could tell there was a correlation between the two, because I wasn't tweeting anything. Like, I don't put a ton of stuff out there. So there was no reason for a ton of people to just say, we're done at that same time frame. That's all happening.
I was
like,
every few months there's a purge on Twitter, and it's always conservatives. And good times. So,
when do we have like the conservatives coming out party, right? Like, we have Pride Month, and why can't we have like the conservative month, right? We should be a protected class at this point in time.
And we're greedy by nature. That's how they label us, right?
Yeah.
So we need to make sure that it's a month with 31 days.
Right.
None of these 28, 30.
Yeah, February is out.
I want the full 31 days. So let's pick a month right now. Let's go with, and I want the weather to be nice too.
Okay.
Because
if we're going to be outside marching.
So let's think maybe October. So October is conservative coming out month.
Yeah.
I'm going to make that official right now here on At the Mic. October is, I like that idea. Nice job.
There has to be something like that at some point, right? Everybody else is a protected class. Everybody else has their banners, their flags, their month. Where's our cereal boxes?
Yeah, loving the Constitution is now counterculture. Absolutely. Yep. I like it. So, like many people, I would imagine, the biggest turning point in your life is COVID, the era of COVID, yeah. Safe to say. I mean, especially considering your line of work was shut down.
There was no work.
Right.
Oh, sports, we don't need them.
But you're also involved in a train that barrels down the tracks that isn't necessarily affected by shutdowns, and it's Bitcoin. I am learning so much through encounters with different people, and you're one of those people. Give us some information, the average person that maybe is familiar enough with Bitcoin to know kind of what it is, but maybe not enough to actually put money into it.
Yeah, and so I was one of those people that back when Bitcoin was around, I would say $4,000, I had a couple of cameramen in Los Angeles that we worked with on the football scene. And we all knew the Federal Reserve and all that. We hated all that. We were on the same train, and gold, silver. And then they're like, yeah, but you need to get into Bitcoin. You need some crypto in your life.
Nice.
And I was like, yeah, I don't think so.
No.
It sounds good, but a digital gold, I don't know about that, right? Passed.
Uh-oh. Hey,
stupid.
You're looking
right?
at somebody
right.
who passed at that time
All
as
of it.
well-ish, yes.
Going back in time, I wish by a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
So I waited and I waited and I waited. And I was still convinced that the $20,000 was the peak. It was a bubble. I didn't understand the rest that kind of went into Bitcoin. And Bitcoin, like, in my opinion, like, you just look at it and it's a math problem each time, and the halving, and you can dive in deeper, and there are different ways to project where it's going to be. Now, you have to know that volatility is part of it because it's a completely free market. Nobody manipulates it, right? You look at the stock market, Jay Powell, he was speaking, and the markets fluctuate on his every word, right? Oh, we're going to tighten in 2023. We have 2 years for that. Oh boy, the market didn't like that. That's 2 years down the road. So Bitcoin, you go back to that, and my family, started in the mining sector.
How cool.
And I learned so much in such a short amount of time about megawatts and transistors, and you just get through the different layers of energy and how it doesn't always mine 100% of the time, right? Like if energy prices go up, the mine shut off. You can go from fully running to off in 10 seconds, right? Like just flip the switch, they go off because it's not economically viable for you to be mining at that time. So it's really cool to learn how Bitcoin mining actually helps stabilize the power grid. You can bring power into remote areas with mining. And I think that you look at the green sector as a whole, right? Like we all know we're going to bring on more wind, more solar, more hydro, right? Like it or not, it's happening.
Sure.
And Bitcoin mining is the most economical way that we've ever seen to entice the green energy sector, because you can't store green energy. It's there and it leaves. So mining is there to take in that excess power, essentially, right? If you don't use the wind from that day in West Texas, it can go into a Bitcoin mine. And they can turn off, right, when we all need to have our air conditioning on and in the afternoons in the Texas summer. So that's a pretty cool thing.
So not too late for someone to get involved with Bitcoin.
No, if you listen to, there's a guy named Raoul Paul, and he has created Real Vision. He's the CEO of Real Vision. I call that the financial Netflix. He'll go and say, this is the discovery of America again, in terms of its relevance.
That's a cool phrase for this.
To what Bitcoin will bring, because it's not just America. It's not just China. It's the billions of people across the world that this is able to help.
Wow.
And I know that a lot of people look at it and they say, oh, we have banks, we don't need it. The United States is never going to let it happen. But you look at El Salvador, right? At the Bitcoin conference that I was just at, that was the big announcement at the end of the conference, that El Salvador was going to have Bitcoin as an actual currency for their country. They also have the US dollar. So one of the cool things that El Salvador has now said for the businesses, if people pay you in Bitcoin, you now have the option as a business to keep it in Bitcoin, or you can automatically transfer it out to US dollars. And 48% of businesses that were studied in this, and it just happened like 2 weeks ago, they said they are going to keep their money in Bitcoin, right? So it's an early adoption. It's something else that you look at, and they said like 70% of people there didn't have a bank account.
Wow.
So it's something that when you look at Africa, El Salvador, all of these other remote places, it really does make sense. And I look at Bitcoin as the future base layer of the monetary system. Things are easier. It's technology, right? Like if you don't want to know the blockchain and all of the back stuff that goes into it, if you just know that it is a more technological advancement in finance, in banking, just making that easier for billions of people around the world, it's going to win because of that alone.
And I think that, and I've thought this since that announcement about El Salvador, that we're going to look back as a society years from now and always go back and thank El Salvador in our minds for being kind of that pioneer as far as a nation state,
willing to take a chance,
right? And
like nobody else was going to step up yet.
This is cool, guys. The water is fine. Come on in. And I think that that's going to be a big catalyst for other countries, corporations, and so on that are going to really send Bitcoin to the moon.
And you have so much growth ahead because it's not in 401ks yet. It's not an ETF yet. When you get that level, you're going to have so many more Americans, first of all, just have easier access to it. And the rest of the world will come on board because it creates incentives, right? There are so many different companies that have come up because of Bitcoin. And the innovation is at a level that is unparalleled. Like the way that this moves and how quickly things can change and new products can be built in this space it's really, if you want some hope, right? Like this is a sector where you can build something and it's not just tearing down and all the rest of the stuff that we hear in the news all the time.
I'm sold.
Yes. There it is.
If you could go back in history and meet one person, Ronald Reagan is your pick. Why is that?
Yeah, I see him right there on the wall. I've been looking at Ronnie the whole time.
I never even realized that what's over my shoulder here on the wall for the perspective of the person sitting over here to my right. Yeah, I have there's a listener to Pat Gray Unleashed. That's my day job. And every year, she lives right down the street from the Reagan Library. And every year, Donna Couillard, hi Donna, thank you so much. She sends me the Reagan calendar for the year.
I love the Reagan Library. It's so pretty out there. Very, very good spot. Go visit it. But I love Ronald Reagan because he was the great communicator, right? Mm-hmm. Like he knew exactly how to message his position. And he wasn't going to stand up and just take whatever the lefts were going to send at him, right? Like he's like, no, I'm going to reject that and I'm going to go over here and tell you why. And picking out one person and making a story and a narrative fit around that one person. I know that his idol was Calvin Coolidge before him, limited government. And every time like I would take those tests, like which president are you? I'd get Calvin Coolidge. And I'd be like, dang it, can I get Reagan?
No.
But I know, but he was the one that really started that off. And limited government, believing in yourself. You can go out there and create anything that you want to, right? Morning in America again. There's hopeful messages that came out of it. And everything about communication, limited government, all of that resonated with me so much that it's just one of those things that I knew as a young child. Like I was really cool with Reagan as a president. And I remember I was like, I don't know, maybe 12 years old and Clinton got elected. And I was just so sad. I already knew, like at that point in time.
Isn't
like,
that weird? I had that same feeling.
This is not a good thing. Okay, well, better go to bed. Got school tomorrow.
Oh, yeah. What I've written down for you here while you've been talking, I've been writing down some reading assignments for you. Obviously, the Captains and the Kings by Caldwell and Coolidge by Amity Shlaes.
Perfect.
You'll need to...
The Forgotten Man, Amity Shlaes.
Also, yes, same author. You got it. Nailed it. Okay. Have you been to Italy?
A couple times.
I couldn't tell from your answer if that was just someplace you wanted to get, but your answer was, well, first of all, the question was like a bucket list or something you want to accomplish in your lifetime. As many trips to Italy as humanly possible, she says. So tell us about Italy, because I've never been there.
We can go full circle back to Ann Taylor when I worked over there. I had a manager who was actually younger than I was, and I call her like the third Olsen twin, Mary Kate Ashley. She looks just like them.
Okay.
Like super stylish, super into fashion. She ended up marrying an Italian wine owner on the coast of Tuscany. And I was like, Brittany, thank you. Because now I have a place.
I was going to say, I'm going to need that address.
Ever to go visit. So actually, after one of the hockey tournaments, when I was in Finland, I knew I didn't have basketball games for 3 weeks.
Okay.
So I spent 2.5 weeks running around Italy and then flew back and did basketball and back to work. So that was still in January, and I got to go and do all of the big bucket list things with 0 lines, right? Like I was walking up in the streets in Florence, and I couldn't find the entrance for the Statue of David spot.
Yeah.
Because it really wasn't marked well on the street. And I was like, where is this? You'd think that there would be people around there, but it was just such an off time for tourists that I had to wait for 2 people in front of me to take my picture.
How cool.
And so it was definitely cool. But the best, kindest people there, they love sharing their food and their culture, and the best food is in Tuscany. They all have their
It's not at the Olive Garden?
No, right?
Right, okay.
Oh. And I'm now really picky about my Italian food. That's the downside of going to Italy. Yeah. Oh, you have another recommendation for me?
Yeah,
Thank you, because I've been looking for these
cool.
in Dallas.
All right. Let's see here. Do you speak Italian?
I speak bad words that they taught us at the wedding, which we just then walked around saying, forgetting like that the other half of the wedding party were Italians and knew what those words meant. And we're like, that's what they taught us.
Let me paint a picture for the audience. I've been writing down stuff and tossing it to you. Now I'm tossing my Post-it notes and my Sharpie so that you, for me, can write down bad words in Italian that I will be able to use at will in my life. So thank you for that. What is currently in your Amazon cart right now?
Anything that the Insta girls tell me to put in my cart.
There's like a
the influencers. I follow a couple of them. Listen, I don't know.
Terrible word. I just can't stand that word.
I know, but
Influencers.
that's what they're called. Listen, we're called talent.
Okay, you're called talent. I'm called producer. I'm called, whipping boy.
It's not much better, right? Like talent. Okay, whatever. But
that's
influencers, funny. Yeah.
Are they not just basically infomercials?
They are, but I follow the ones that I actually like and trust. There's not a huge market of authentic influencers. There's just a couple of them that I find to be likable. And I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I'll give you that small commission that you're going to make off of this because I do want that item.
Okay. Well, what's the greatest thing that you've purchased from an influencer?
Oh, I mean, all of my clothes come from influencers or Poshmark, either way.
What's Poshmark?
It's an app where you resell your clothes. Again, being on TV, there's a lot of cycling through clothes, right?
Huh.
So I wear them a couple times, and then you're like, well, I've worn that on TV. Everybody's seen it. Guys can wear the same suits over and over and over again.
You don't have a wardrobe that you just thumb through?
Yeah, and then I get rid of it and I add new. It's a good system. It's a cheap system. All of the money stays in there. Okay. In the Poshmark pool. And I'm like, I get that for free essentially because I sold all this.
And you
get all of that.
You sold me at cheap.
Yeah.
And so
I like to buy things on sale.
Again, you sold me at sale. I'm sorry, I'm writing down an Italian restaurant here. Okay. If people want to find you on social media.
Twitter.
Just Twitter?
Jill_Savage.
Yeah.
That's the best place. I mean, Jill. I have Instagram, but nobody whatever.
Yeah, I don't have anything.
You can see old pictures of me at football games.
Is it still Jill
Savage?
Okay, Jill Savage. Okay.
_ at the end. Because there's a Christian author who is also named Jill Savage. Okay. That's not me.
All right.
But she has gone through and she beat me to Twitter, Instagram, JillSavage.com. Don't go to any of these places. It's not me.
Now you've got the underscore you have to deal with.
Yeah.
Kind of tragic, don't you think? Because it's not the underscore on the keyboard is not conveniently placed. You got to do the shift, and then you got to reach over here. Well, I guess on the phone it's not quite that way, old man. Sorry.
Wow.
But it's still annoying, right?
It is. It's a hassle. We don't need to do it, but we do. Okay. Apparently, we do.
Yeah. All right. And so do follow Jill _Savage on Twitter, just to find out all the exciting stuff that she's up to.
There'll be a lot of Bitcoin stuff lately. That's the world.
Okay, very good. Anything that we've missed? Anything I need to cover? Go back, talk about here? Or are we good?
No. I mean, lots of Italian trips in my future. Couldn't go during COVID. Can't wait to get back. Lots of good food.
Well, then you'll have use for that Instagram page again.
Exactly.
All right, Jill Savage. Thanks so much for joining me on At the Mic.
Thanks for having me.
I had such a great time chatting with Jill. I especially enjoyed learning naughty Italian words on the down low. That's kind of what was going on here behind the scenes. This is one episode where having a camera rolling in the studio would have actually been a lot of fun. And if you have fun listening to this podcast, I hope you'll rate and review it over on iTunes. Be sure to follow us, share this podcast with your friends. I really would be grateful if you wouldn't mind helping this podcast grow. You are actually the key to getting this show into more earbuds. And don't forget, you can catch up on any episodes you've missed, or your friends and family that you're sharing the show with can go and check out the entire archive of our shows at themicshow.com. It's as easy as sending that link to your friends and family, and I hope that you will. themicshow.com. Next week, I'm going to sit down with my physical therapist. Yeah, I injure myself that often that I actually have a guy His name is Chad Wample. He's going to be my guest. He's going to sit down with us next week, and I hope you'll join us for that. Until then, go be free, and thank you for listening.
This has been At the Mic with Keith, an independent podcast production. Head to atthemicshow.com for archived episodes, sponsor information, and ways to connect.